Hi, my name is John Harvey. I'm a professor of economics at Texas Christian University. And this is the third in a series of videos from Up to Us, the TCU campaign that's designed to educate the student body on the national debt and how it affects them directly. And in this part of the series, I'm going to talk about the economic impact of the national debt and the deficit. And there's two very basic, very poorly understood facts about government debt. The first is the U.S. government can never be forced to default on debt. The debt is entirely in dollars. It is absolutely impossible for the United States to ever be forced to default. When Mexico, for example, had trouble with debt in 1994, it's because the debt was denominated in foreign currency. Mexico can come up with as many pesos as they need, but they can't come up with dollars, and they can't come up with euros. Our debt is 100% in dollars. We could never be forced to go bankrupt, ever. That should be completely off the table. This is an absolute fact. This should be the least controversial thing we ever talk about with the national debt. And yet I find that people simply cannot possibly believe that this is true. In fact, I know you're not going to believe me, so let me read to you a couple of quotes here. First, from the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis, a publication of theirs. As the sole manufacturer of dollars, whose debt is denominated in dollars, the United States can never be forced to become insolvent. Then the United States can pay any debt it has because we can always print more money to do that. So there is zero probability of default. That's from Alan Greenspan, the former chair of the Fed. In the case of the United States, default is absolutely impossible. All U.S. government debt is denominated in U.S. dollar assets. This is from Peter Zeihan, who was the vice president of analysis for Stratfor, a strategic research company. And I'm going to keep on going because no one ever believes this, even though this should be this should be something everyone takes for granted. In the case of the United States, in case of governments boasting monetary sovereignty and debt denominated in their own currency, which is us, it is technically impossible to fall into debt default. This is from Irvan Mahi, the European Asset Allocation and Options Strategy Advisor. And I'll give you one more. There is never a risk of default for a sovereign nation that issues its own free-floating currency and where its debts are denominated in that currency. This is from Mike Norman, who is the chief economist for John Thomas Financial. So that should be completely off the table. Any politician you hear talking about that, turn down the TV. The second really basic fact about the debt and the deficit that is very poorly understood is that the U.S. government's deficit is your surplus. Say there were only two people in the entire economy, Addison and Randolph, and if you don't recognize those names, then we're going to have to drop you from TCU. Let's say that Addison, whenever Addison spends money, that's going to be Randolph's income. And whenever Randolph spends money, that's going to be Addison's income. And if Addison spent more than he earned, then by definition, Randolph must have earned more than he spent. It's absolutely impossible for this to work any other way with only two people. If Addison has a deficit because he has spent more than he earned, then Randolph must have a surplus because he earned more than he spent. We'll simply replace Addison with the federal government and replace Randolph with the private sector, and you'll understand a very basic fact about government budgeting. The federal government's budget, by definition, is the private sector surplus. So you have to bear in mind that those who have been calling for a reduction in government spending or even a balanced budget are at the same time asking that the private sector's income be reduced. Imagine how well that would be received if that's how they were wording it. Hey, everybody, we need to work on reducing the private sector's income, rather than, hey, everybody, we need to reduce government spending. This is an inescapable fact of accounting, and I'm going to continue to talk about the economic impact of this in the last part of this series in part 4. But again, it is so frustrating, and I'm very thankful to have a chance to make these videos, that these things are so poorly understood and that our economic policy is being so poorly carried out because the general public and sadly many of our politicians are very ignorant of how government budgeting works. Thank you very much.